go. But now, au contraire, it is our business because we had to clean this up. It's like you left a big old pile of SHIT in the floor. And I got to clean it up, but you ain't going to tell me why you did it? First of all, what is a generational curse? Now, Webster defines a generational curse as a negative pattern that is passed from one generation to the next. I won't say that it's negative because in all cases it's not negative. It's just behaviors that have been passed through the bloodline, not necessarily negative. Just more repetitive in nature than anything. Now, I found myself interested in generational curses when a couple things happened. I noticed some repetitive things that had happened throughout the bloodline. Repeated throughout the bloodline. I had noticed that, right? So that caught my attention because I'm all about synchronicities and signs. So anytime something keeps repeating itself, one of my favorite quotes has always been, lessons are repeated until they are learned. I never knew why. I really like that quote. And then maybe starting 5 years ago, I started a book, and that book was called The Journey of 10. So I wanted to do a book about 10 women in my family, past and present. And I didn't even know, I promise, I didn't even know what a generational curse was. And then recently I had a reading and I was informed that I have the responsibility of breaking the generational curses that are on my family. And it's funny because I always say I'm establishing generational wealth for my future grands, for my grands, my future grands, for my bloodline. And I am establishing a new bloodline. We got to heal it. We're not passing on any more trauma, any more generational curses. We are passing on generational wealth and a new bloodline. That's what we're passing on. Now, I defined what a generational curse is. So the second question is, where do generational curses come from? Now, some people say that it comes from a witch. A witch put a curse on your family, or a lot of people say in the Bible that God put curses on the head of certain households, etc., etc. Curses are nothing but spells. It's just words, ill words spoken by somebody with intent. That's all that curses are. And I have heard from one person in our family that said, I think there's a curse on this family. Curses can be broken. Curses can be broken. Now, generations, we're going to use curse for the purpose of this video. Okay, we're going to use the word curse for the purpose of this video, but this was just some bad intent. And it could have been a little black magic involved because, back in the day and presently, people of color, Mr. Charlie is cutting up. Mr. Charlie been cutting up for years, but y'all want to waste y'all magical powers on other black people. Don't even make no sense to me. But anyway, I digress. So, how are generational curses passed? Generational curses are passed down the line from your grandma way over there. She started it from the beginning of time. She passed it to your grandmas, your grandmothers down the line. It passed to your mama, and then it passes to you. It passes to the females in your line. So all of my all of my grandmother's daughters had, well, my mama's older sister, she had boys. So, of course, they didn't catch none of this. My one aunt didn't even have kids. So, my mama had 2 daughters. And we caught all the hell that came up out of that bloodline. So, what happens is, it's not intentional. It's not intentional. But if they didn't know how to heal, they didn't know how to heal it, then it passed to us. If my mama, stuff got passed to my mama that she didn't know how to heal, it got passed to us. So I'm saying these are women that came up out of slavery, all kinds of madness. My mama was conscious. Like, my mama was conscious, a little bit of conscious. So I think that maybe she started to do some work, but it never got, she never got a chance to work it out. And it was a lot. It was a lot, I tell you. Then from your paternal side, you get everything that comes out of your dad's mom's lineage too, because it's passed through the women. Now, I presume that it's probably passed the same way through men. It comes through the men in your line and then your grandfather on your dad's side. I would presume. I don't know for sure, but I don't see why it wouldn't. Okay? So, you get all this coming up the line. Add in slavery. Okay? Add in your own personal karma. And what do you have? You don't have an inheritance of money. You have an inheritance of crazy. And you have to work through all that. I remember one time my sister said to me, she said, you know, it is really crazy how our lives run so parallel. And I never forgot when she said that. Never forgot when she said that. And then it came back to me when I started studying generational curses. Now, what kind of things can be passed through the bloodline in a generational curse? I have a list here. Funny you would ask. So you can pass violence, alcoholism, disease, domestic violence, mental illness. Mental illness is huge, huge in my family. A poverty mindset can be passed on. Lack of trust, adultery, abandonment, instability, just an emotional instability. Just emotional instability, family feuds, just, you know, cousins and family that just don't get along and nobody knows the origin. For some reason, you just don't get along. Like, I have a cousin that she's my sister. Like, I love her like she's my sister. So I'm not going to say I love her like a sister. She's my sister. But for some reason, as much as we love each other, we can't get it. We just can't get it together, and we can't keep it together. And I'm just at a place where, because I'm building the new bloodline, I can't give nothing, no more energy to that. I can't, and I won't. Okay? I can send you love, I can pray for you, and I can pray with you, but I can't give no more energy to that. Sibling rivalries. Brothers and brothers don't get along. Sisters and sisters don't get along. And I have that on both sides of my family. Sibling rivalries. I said illnesses. Now, with the sibling rivalry, I don't know if this ties in, but my father, it does tie in. My dad and his younger brother just were like oil and water. More so, like, they could fight, but nobody else better not do nothing to either one of them, because you was going to have to deal with the other one. But my daddy's baby brother was more of like an antagonist. He liked to antagonize my dad, right? He liked to argue with my dad, probably to try to get his energy, because he seemed like a little blood-sucking energy vamp. He just seemed like that was his energy now, looking back. But my grandmother oh my God. My grandmother left my grandfather when my dad was 6, my second oldest uncle was 4, my aunt was 2, and my uncle was 6 months. So he really didn't have any knowledge of my grandmother. He didn't really know anything about her because she didn't raise him. So when him and my dad would get in fights, he would be like, or they didn't really fight. They would just, it was a lot of verbal sparring, just a lot of verbal, who could say the nastiest thing to each other. And my uncle would always say, your mammy, your mama. And I would be like, my God, like, are they not brothers? I was like, why would he say that? But I mean, that's what my uncle did. So I always through life used to wonder, like, why did my grandma leave her kids? Like, why? You know, you're a kid, so you hear things, but you don't get the full story. You know what I'm saying? So I always just think in my mind, like, why did she leave her kids? Like, why would she leave her kids? And I know the backstory. Like, my grandfather had another situation, and my grandfather was said to be paranoid schizophrenic. Now, my personal take on it, when people have mental illnesses, I think it's just spiritual. I think it's spiritual energy. It's something spiritual that they don't know how to hone, and it hasn't been cultivated, or because my grandfather's mother left him when he was very young because my great-grandfather was shooting at her, so she had no other choice but to leave. This could have been a generational curse, which could have started mental illness. It's always, they say these generational curses start by trauma. Seeing your father shoot at your mama would be hellified traumatic, if you ask me. But anyway, so my grandfather had another situation. But my grandma just really didn't seem like she was the type that went for a whole bunch of foolishness. Like, she had a lot of ambition, and I can't see how a small town in Homer, Louisiana could contain her. So my grandmother left, but I would always be like, man, I wonder why she left. I wonder why she left her kids. Like, that was always a thought in my mind, right? And I remember one time I was spending some time with her in Chicago, and I don't know if my grandmother read my mind or she pulled this out of the ethers, but she looked at me and she said, it's nobody's business why I left my kids. And I'm like, then I was like, oh, but now, au contraire, it is our business, because we had to clean this up. It's like you left a big old pile of SHIT in the floor, and I got to clean it up, but you ain't gonna tell me why you did it. Had you told us, we could have cleaned this up a long time ago. So it didn't get cleaned up, okay? So it has shown up a few other times in the bloodline. Now, let me tell you something else that came out of that situation. So my dad transitioned very young, like 50 years old. My dad passed away. That's young. But my dad had a massive coronary heart attack. And I remember thinking, like, wow, I hope I just remember feeling like, my dad didn't feel like he was loved. He didn't feel like he was loved. Now, I would imagine a son, like, you know how sons, how they are with their mothers, and for your mom to be there, like from 1 to 6, from baby to 6, and then one day you're just gone. Like, what do you do with all that emotion? Then, not to mention, you leave them with my grandfather, who's not quite all there. You leave them with my great-grandfather, who was shooting at his wife, so he's obviously not all there. Then they say that my great-grandfather was married, turned around and married this lady who was like was into voodoo, whatever. So she had him, he was already not seated properly, and she didn't make matters better. And I remember my dad was telling me, like, he was like, these were people that if a horse or a mule didn't do what it was supposed to do, they would punch it in his face or hit it with something. Like, wow. So my dad did not learn how to communicate his feelings, nor he never got a chance to communicate his feelings. And he loved his mom. And my dad, I've always said that my dad chose to transition rather than tell his mom, hey, when this happened, this is what it turned me into. This is how I felt. This is how I even felt towards you. My dad would rather die than to address his emotional issues with my grandmother. That has shown up in the line again. Now, when my dad transitioned, I remember, and nobody ever knew why she said this, but my grandmother said he didn't have to die so that I could live. And I never understood it then, but now I get it. She knows that he chose to transition instead of hurting her or saying what he needed to say to her. Pretty deep, huh? I know. So now something else that happened very, very weird. It was very strange. My dad, before I was born, got shot, right? He got shot, and there was a bullet that our whole life he had, it was lodged by his spine, somewhere in the back of his head by his spine. And they didn't want to remove the bullet because they thought that he wouldn't survive it. So he just had this bullet in the back of his head. So, they said the only reason why he survived at all because he had so much alcohol in his system, and that is what kept him alive. It slowed his blood flow or whatever. So when I turned 16, I started dating this guy. And not in the beginning, but pretty quickly, this guy turned into like a maniac. And he was very, very abusive. My mom would have to like follow me to the bus stop and stay there with me while I got on the bus in the morning to go to school because he would be at the bus stop trying to fight me. I used to walk through this park on my way home from school. He'd be hiding in the park. One time after we broke up, like really delusional. We broke up and I was on a date with somebody else. We had a really nice time. He was walking me to the door. He jumped out of the bushes at my house. If he heard that somebody even liked me and he thought it was somebody that he could beat up, he would go beat him up. He would go fight people. But one day he showed me a newspaper article, and the newspaper article was about his dad had spent time in prison for shooting my dad. And I always wondered after that, like, did he seek me out? Did he know who I was? Did he know who my dad was? Was him doing the things that he did to me like a way of trying to get my dad back? Or, souls follow souls. So I just didn't know, but I just thought that was the whole thing was just very weird. Just very weird. And I remember the first time my dad laid eyes on him. My dad, nobody said, oh, this is whoever. My dad looked at him and my dad said, get out of my yard. That was it. He was like, get out of my yard. So it was like intuitively my dad knew. And my mom never told my dad what this boy was doing because it would have been a situation. We always protected my dad that way. Not that my dad couldn't protect himself, but just because we knew that it was no chill with him. Like, So, but yeah, that was just a very, very weird situation. Now, I do want to talk to you about, because I don't think I can get it all in. Like, I'm almost 20 minutes in. Let's see. What are some things that you can do, I guess, to start to break down the generational curses? Now, something else I know, it could be something as simple as, I remember growing up, like, all the adults in my family, excuse me, all the adults in my family smoke cigarettes. Every last one of them, right? So when we got older, like, two of my cousins, they were older than me, they started smoking cigarettes, and I just thought, oh, that's the coolest thing. So I started smoking cigarettes too for a while. But cigarettes, I quickly learned that cigarettes were actually quite disgusting. They smelled absolutely horrible. You smelled horrible. And I didn't like the idea of having anything control me. So I just quit smoking cigarettes cold turkey. That was it. I was done, and I never touched a cigarette again. And it's been 8 years. I did the same thing with alcohol. Like, I used to, like, drink my drink back in the day was Martell, right? And I used to drink Martell. I would get it straight. Martell and water. No, it was Martell and water. And it still wasn't diluted enough. Like, I would take a shot, I would take a sip of my drink, and I would hold it in my mouth for God knows how long until it stopped burning. And then I'd swallow it. Like, it wasn't pleasant. Like, drinking isn't even good. I don't even know why people do that. It's so weird. Excuse me. I don't know why people do that. But those are just, like, things that are simple that you can break. Another thing that I'm breaking, because I refuse to do it anymore, is participate in family dysfunction, family arguments, these phantom feuds. I refuse to participate in it anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. So it stops with me. It stops with me. In terms of mental illness, it's like, I heard someone say this the other day. All black people should probably go see a therapist. Not the person that's going to give you medication. Everybody needs to talk. Now, some of y'all need medication. Some of y'all have multiple personalities, which is caused by PTSD and trauma that is associated with generational curses. So some of y'all do need medication. Some of y'all need medication. Only you know who you are. But yeah, some of us need, I can't even think what I was going to say because my head is itching. Some of us need medication. We really need to go see somebody and start talking this out. Like, a lot of us are just like, this is not even my, like, I remember, like, having big plans for my life, like what I planned on doing. And then things didn't actually go that way. And I remember not too long ago, I was like, this is not my life. I kept saying, like, this is not my life. Like, why am I even in this family? Like, I remember saying that. But think about what I said. If all of my grandmothers, all the women in my line, me and my sister inherited all of that. All of that. And then from my grandmother's side, now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 girls that we inherited this coming out of my grandmother's line. But coming out of my mama's line, it fell on me and my sister. So no wonder things have been freaking crazy for us. Woo! Now, it is said that generational curses start, how they start is by, they're associated, like I said, with trauma and PTSD. Like, they're associated with trauma and PTSD, and they're acts of violence and abuse that start the trauma. Now, I know for a while, like, I didn't trust men as far as I could throw them, and like, for say five guys that I dated, it was the same thing, until one day I was just like, man, like, it's like you keep dating the same guy over and over again, but they're different people, but the spirit is the same. So again, anytime there's synchronicities, anything like that that's showing up, there's a lesson in it for you. There's something that needs to be healed. Now, my grandmother on my mother's side, my grandmother, when my mom, she was married to my grandfather, and when my mom turned 4, wow, that was weird. When my mom was born, my mom is the fourth child in my fourth child to be born to my grandparents. My grandfather started having kids with his side piece, and every year, he had a baby with my mom. He had a baby with he had a baby with my grandma, which was my mom. He had a baby with the other woman. He had another baby with my grandma. He had another baby with the other woman. He kept doing that, right? So the last 4 kids, every year, he had a baby with my grandma, had a baby with this other woman. So my grandma dealt with that. Now, everyone in my family, on my grandmother's line, my grandmother's kids, 8 of them, 8 of them, including my mom, they all had diabetes except for my mom. My mom didn't have diabetes. My mom had a different spirit. Like, she had a different spirit, but that's not to say that she didn't, inherit something from my grandmother, because boy, did she ever. But diabetes is caused by all the sweetness being squeezed out of your life. And all of my grandmother's kids, to me, they just are stern, and they were cold. Except for the women. Like my mama's older sister, she wasn't so much. My Aunt Lucy, that sister was something else. Like, I never saw her laugh until she was like 69 years old. Like, I take that back. I've only seen her like laugh maybe 4 or 5 times in her life. But I always thought that was because how stern my grandmother was. Like, my grandmother taught me the art of sitting in a room with somebody in silence. She taught me how to sit in silence. I would sit in a room with her for hours and she wouldn't say a word. Not a word. Not a word. So she passed that adultery, like you stay with a man through whatever, to my mom. So my mom gets in a relationship, marries my dad. My dad is abusive, and my mom doesn't leave. My mom says, she always said, I stayed because of y'all. But a part of me wished she had left, just so she didn't have to experience that. But that had to have, and then fast forward, my first boyfriend is abusive. So you see how this kind of works? This is wild. Now, some family members, they say, show up in a family, in a lineage, like the upper echelon, like those peasants. That's the other side of the family. Or they spell their names different or some crazy mess like that. That is also a part of a behavioral personality disorder, that you've somehow convinced yourself that what is plaguing other people in the family doesn't touch you, but everything is passed through the blood. Everything. So it doesn't matter how far you go. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. This passes through the blood. And it's going to show up and it has to be healed. Sorry. So just a few things that I wanted to talk to you about how you can begin to start to break some of these curses. So, like I said, you want to uncover some of the secrets in the family. You want to, like, you know what they say, every time like an older family member passes, a tree dies, because they die with information, especially if nobody has been sitting there talking to them and finding out things. Like for me, I have one uncle left on my mom's side, and I have one aunt left on my dad's side, and she ain't talking. She's not talking. I don't want to talk about that. So here's information that could be beneficial to us, but she ain't talking. And my uncle on my mom's side, remember what I said about them? Mean. This man is mean and surly, and I just don't know that I'm going to get any beneficial information out of him. So you want to ask questions. How did you grow up? Or what happened? Or what was this? Or what was that? Get as much information as you can, because if you see that show up again in the bloodline, you know, that can be healed. It doesn't need to be passed on any further. Identify repeated patterns, like things that keep happening over and over again in the family. Now, this is my favorite part. You know, every family has a black sheep, right? But it's not for the reason that you think. Like a lot of people say, oh, the black sheep is the alcoholic, the person that does drugs, they do this, they do that. No, the black sheep is the person that knows the most. The black sheep is the person that has gathered the most information or has witnessed a lot of things. And the black sheep is the whistleblower. So in order for stories not to be told, or for people not to listen to the black sheep, people will, in the family, will say certain things to try to cause dissension between the black sheep and other people in the family. So if something is said, oh, don't believe that person because they're this, they're that, they're blah, blah, blah. They said this, they said that. That's why they're the black sheep. Not because they do other stuff. The black sheep holds secrets. Now, what can you do to start to try to heal some of this stuff? Forgive. You actually have to forgive. Like, because who are you going to be mad at? Like, there are things that happened to me in my life that, okay, I can hold my mom accountable, I can hold my dad accountable, but then they didn't know any better, and they did the best they could. So who am I going to blame? Like, the blame has to stop somewhere. You can't keep, it's going to keep going. So you have to forgive. You have to forgive, and you also have to stop participating in the madness. You have to do whatever you need to do to heal you. You can't keep participating in the madness. You have to forgive them. You have to forgive the situation. You have to forgive yourself. And you have to forgive the person. You have to... See, I struggle with forgiveness of people. I'm not going to tell somebody to forget. Well, I can't tell somebody to forgive. You forgive if you want to, but I'm just saying, for me, you forgive or not forgive, because I am of the mindset that you don't have to forgive anybody if you don't want to. You have to forgive the offense that was, that's the word I'm looking for. You have to forgive the offense that was projected onto you, but you don't have to forgive the act. But you do need to move past it. You can't just keep repeatedly over and over and over again playing it over again like it could be different, right? So Now, there are some people that were molested and raped and there was sexual inappropriateness. I was fortunate enough that there was some sexual inappropriateness, but I wasn't raped and I wasn't raped. So I thank God for the mercies. But bottom line, you were preyed upon. You were preyed upon, and the person that preyed on you, somebody preyed on them, and thus and so. It's just a vicious, nasty, disgusting cycle that keeps going. And the best thing I could say for this is try to get some help. Try to get some help. I'm not saying take medication. I'm saying go talk to somebody. I don't care if it's a life coach, a therapist, or just find someone that you can talk to about what happened to you, so you can lay that down, or just carry it with you, but you're not so affected by it. So that's one thing I could say. You were preyed upon, and the person that did it to you was preyed upon, and it just keeps going and going and going. Now, also, you have to let go of like guilt that's associated with anything that happened to you. Like anything. If you were molested, if you were raped, anything, you have to let go of any guilt that you carry. Like, I'm nasty, or I should have did this, or I shouldn't have let that happen, or like I should have told somebody, I should have did. You were doing whatever it was that you could do or you knew how to do to survive in the moment. So you have to lay that down. There's nothing you could do to change it. It's in the past. I'm not telling you to let it go, but try to work that out. Try to work that out as best you can. And lastly, you should celebrate like anything that you have done or that you are doing to break generational curses. You should celebrate it. I don't care if it's something, like I said, as minimal as stop smoking cigarettes because everybody else did it. Stop smoking cigarettes, stop drinking because alcoholism and destructive behaviors and things like that pass through the bloodline. So celebrate whatever you have done to break generational curses. You survived it. You survived it. So move on to whatever the next and the next is, and you can do it. It can be done. And some of us who seem to have it like a little worse than others, that's your duty. That is your assignment. That is what you are here to do. Break the generational curses that are on your family. Affirm that it stops with you. That it stops with you. You will no longer participate in it. Like I said, I am not participating in any more family arguments. Who shot John in the barn? Who did this? Ooh, you said. Ooh, why you? Not doing that anymore. Not doing that anymore. I'm not I'm not partaking or participating in any dysfunction. I'm not, because I am creating a new bloodline for my future grandkids, for my son, my future my grands. I am creating a new bloodline. And that bloodline includes generational wealth. It doesn't include dysfunction. I will pass on money to my future generation. I'm not passing on dysfunction. And I think, there's so much more. This really isn't like something that you can get through in 30 minutes. I really wanted to give an hour to it, but I know, we don't necessarily like to listen. We microwave. We the microwave generation. We like it fast. So we like our knowledge fast. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this is going to aid you in laying down some of your generational baggage. I know it made sense. Like, I know it made sense. Like things that just come out of like, what is this? Like, why do I feel like this? Blah, blah, blah. It's not yours. It's not your energy. But if you feel it, it's for you to heal it for future generations. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, please subscribe to my video and please like the video. Some of y'all y'all watch the videos, you don't even hit the like button. That's rude. All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. Thanks for listening. Peace.